there, welcome back. Now you probably have noticed it's been a while since I've done a video, and there was a reason for this. I did a video with Solitary Ronin, like a shared one a few weeks ago, but there's a reason why I haven't done a single video by myself for a while. It's just because my father died. So obviously, I've been taking time, and even after I'm doing a bunch of videos, I've kind of stored up. But even in the next few weeks, you may see me doing videos, you may not, for a little bit still. It's like, it's a process, takes time, so I'm not going to force to watch films I don't feel like at the moment to make videos about them. I'll just do them as I go, so you might just see an odd video here or there. You might, just depends how I feel. I'm not going to push myself to do more videos. So the first two videos I'm doing back are tied to what happened with my father. The first one, Orphans, I'm going to talk about now, was the last film I watched before everything went wrong and he passed away. Or the last significant film, really. I've watched some trashy stuff, I didn't really watch anything significant. And the next one, which I'll be doing in another video, Thin Red Line, was the first proper series film I'd watched after the event. There's other videos I'm going to talk about, films I talked about that were a bit more commercial and a bit easier to digest that I watched that I'll do a video on as well. And I've also got, oh, what the hell is this? Because I saw one film that was truly appalling. But that's the reason why I haven't been doing videos. I did the one with Ronin to actually kind of get back into it a little bit. But I'm still kind of processing, so this is the first one. It might not be the best video I'll ever do, but there we go. Now, Orphans is a weird film to have seen just before when your parents pass away, because it's about a parent passing away. And I think subconsciously I watched it because I knew something was up. And it's that kind of thing where I did it knowing there was some issues, but I was obviously dealing with something, so I watched it. I've been putting off watching this film for a while. I've had it for a long time. I've indicated about a good release. I had it on DVD for years as well. So it's a film that I know well. I saw it in the cinema. It was shot in Glasgow in the late 90s. It came out, but with very little acclaim. It's just slowly built up his reputation because Peter Mullan directed it. Peter Mullan's a well-known actor, and he directs every so often when he gets the money. And this was his debut, and it was well received by some people. But I think as the years have gone on, it's become more popular. It's become more of a interesting thing, in Scotland at least. And I think international audience have started to recognise it as something that's unique, because it is about grief. And it's not about the traditional polite version of grief. It's about the crazy element of grief. Because everyone, usually when talking about grief, people talk about how they felt, and it's very stained. And honestly, most films about grief don't do much for me. I think you need to come at it in an indirect way to get the emotions, so it's not just generic, So there are good films about this subject, but a lot of time when the mainstream tries to do it, it tends to be very basic and not very satisfying. This one is really about the craziness that comes along with grief, not the polite stuff, the way you behave that's you look back on and go, I shouldn't have done that, that was stupid. And when all of your worst instincts come out, and that's kind of what the film's about, is this idea of it's a film about four people, members of a family, and how they all individually deal with the death, as they basically takes place over one night. As they've taken the coffin to the church, and they go for a drink. All hell breaks loose, and then you follow all four of them as they deal with their grief in crazier and crazier ways. So the incident that starts off as where the oldest son, played by Gary Lewis, he goes up and sings during a karaoke bar. He goes up and says a speech about his mum, which is completely inappropriate because no one else cares. Everyone else just try to have a good time, and he makes it about himself. And of course, the middle son, played by Douglas Henshaw, he just laughs a little bit because he knows his brother and he knows he's definitely going to make this all about himself. And that offends people. And then he sees someone else laughing at his brother, and because he's feeling guilty about what happened, he starts a fight with that person, and he gets knifed. It's not like a really bad stabbing, but it's a stabbing you need to go and get treated so that you can be fine. And so he decides that he's going to treat it that night, and he's going to treat it like an industrial accident when he goes to work. So he'll go into work before the morning before the funeral, which is a stupid plan. It's insane, but he's sort of so focused, and you start to see the kind of selfish side of him. You find out he's divorced. His ex-wife, had an alcohol problem. She's going to AA, and she's taking care of the kids. And you get the sense of he's not always the most emotionally aware of people, but he's also the kind of the glue that holds this family together. Because he does have emotions, he is sensitive in some ways, but in other ways he's not, and it's like this mix of machismo and sensitivity of someone who's basically doesn't have a lot of self-control because of his dealing with grief, and how the worst parts of his personality come out and are unchecked. The youngest brother is the swot of the family. He's the one who does well at school. He's going to university, but he's now finding it that he's not. He's thinking, well, why did I do this? I did this for my mother and she's dead. And he's trying to figure out what he wants to do with his life. And because his brother gets stabbed, he's trying to prove himself to be someone who's tougher than he looks, and how he's perceived. And it is a kind of macho thing. But he's also a sensitive person. But he's trying to push that down. So basically, it's a family that was brought up by their mother. And they all do have a sensitive side. And it's them trying to deal with that. There's also a younger sister who has MS and is a wheelchair, and she gets abandoned by her eldest brother early on, and you see her adventures going through Glasgow. She ends up getting taken to the home of someone who's from this little girl who finds her and takes her to her home. And it's this weird series of adventures about this whole idea of what community is like in a modern flat area, and how some people look after others even if it's difficult and other people won't. And it becomes this thing about kindness and what people get from kindness. Do they, even if they're going to be not treated well in return, some people will be kind and other people won't be. And the whole idea is about how do you deal with people in a community. So you get these four strands. You've got one about selfish grief, in a sense someone's keeping it to himself. So the oldest brother goes to church, and because of an argument, because he's been selfish to his middle brother, he ends up breaking the virgin marriage. So he's trying to put it back together, and he's just ignoring the entire rest of his family and what they actually need just for his own selfish reasons. You have the middle brother who's trying to do a con just to avoid actually dealing. Even though he's dealing with his family, he's trying to avoid it. But he's also very drawn to it and feels needs to protect him, but he's also been completely irresponsible and not following up on it. He lets his brother go off in a side thing and doesn't really try and stop him. He doesn't really follow up on his sister, and she's out there somewhere. And it's this thing of responsibility and lack of responsibility. And he's just going wild in that. And the younger brother's going to go and try and kill someone for stabbing his brother, and it's his. He ends up with his cousin Tanga, who's a total psycho, and they have to go and find a gun, and then they go and find bullets for the gun because they're not together, and then they have to try and those situation gets out of control as you start to deal with the kind of the class side of Glasgow, the rich versus poor, where the rich order stuff from the poor, and the poor are forced to basically be the serfs, basically, and there's just all about class resentment. So you have a lot of stuff about Glasgow, but it's all done with a kind of darkly comic look, and it's also done with the idea that none of them are perfect. Everyone's got their issues, and you're looking at very flawed people dealing with grief and not dealing with grief, and the sense of all of these problems could have been solved easily if people had been well aware that they're not in full control. So let's be kind and just go back home and just don't do anything. Instead, they had to go into the pub, get in a fight, and all this stuff starts to spiral out of control. And it's just this idea of people not facing up to their grief and not facing up to the emotional loss, and the idea of they can't really. Their head's been unsprung and it's going crazy, and it's just a messed up situation. So that's a wonderful film. I've always loved this film, even though obviously the moment how it's tied to my position just now is like obviously it was a good coping mechanism for something I knew was kind of coming, perhaps. So obviously I left it off until pretty much close to the event. But it is a kind of good way to look at and see, like, yeah, you don't do this. You try and be calm. You try and look out for your family and look out for people's flaws, because they will be magnified. And which is something I've seen just in response to what's happened with me, is everyone's response is magnified a little bit, so you just have to be calm and give people a chance to find their footing again. This film is like what happens when you don't do that, and how all the emotions can get the better of you, and you can do things you really regret and you really should not have done. And but the film, what the film's good at is actually showing the human side of all these characters as well. Like the kid who goes to try and shoot someone, over the night starts to see it's not a good idea, but he's also venting his machoism and his machismo and a sense of no one takes him seriously. So everyone's saying, are you really up to this? And he always pushes himself to the worst situation possible because he's dealing with his own sensitivity and how people perceive him. And it's a really good look at an element of Scottish culture where people who are not macho are looked down upon. But then again, you've also got people who are seemingly more responsible, who actually have lots of issues in their lives, which is the case of the middle brother. But you also see the kindness in both those characters too. They do pull themselves back from the brink. They do realise that they've gone off on one. And the sister has to go through hell to find out she does need help, and that's fine. It's fine. She doesn't have to always be like as independent as possible. She thinks she's that focused on not being a burden. No idea about burden the communities, because through her story. And the oldest brother's story is basically actually be open to your own family and don't bring it on to yourself, and don't be selfish about the grief. So it's each side of grief, each side of the Scottish culture, where you do have people who are in Scotland who are very selfish about their own emotions and lord over other people, and everyone knows that kind of person. Everyone hates that kind of person because it's very prevalent in Scottish culture. It's something that's always there. Also, the thing about dealing with community and dealing with accepting help is something Scotland has a problem with sometimes, but there's a big outgrowth in Scotland of trying to help people who are, in trouble. So Scotland's got a weird schizo feeling about that. This film shows that as well. It also shows the kind of the people who are studious, sometimes they feel guilty about it, and the people who are the responsible ones have crazy sides they can't really own up to until it's too late. In this case, it all goes completely crazy. So there's lots of things in the culture this film looks at. It isn't scared to be funny and dark and twisty and look at some of the absurd sides of the culture. You have a lot of really funny side characters who are very Scottish, who are very like people who anyone in Scotland sees a film. I know that kind of person. I've seen that kind of person around. Like, they're very identifiable from Scotland, but I'm sure if in a foreign country you look at and go, is this a caricature? And it's like, no, it's not. It's really not. There are some weird idiots around in Scotland. Just like there's weird idiots in every culture. It's just different versions of it. So this film is wonderful. It really is wonderful, and it's always been underrated. Peter Mullan has a career as an actor that's much more celebrated in his career as a director, but this is a really good debut. And Magdalene Sisters, which followed up, was also a very good film. I've started watching Ned's, which I've grown up, I haven't watched it. But yeah, this is really something. It's available on Indicator. I recommend buying it because it is an excellent film, and it is a very good look at Scottish culture. Not in a polite way, just the kind of pure id of Scottish culture is this film. Because it's taking to the most extreme thing of grief and using that to look at Scottish culture, but also look at the idea of grief, but look at it in all its facets and all its crazy facets, and how it affects people left behind. So this is a wonderful film. I highly recommend it. Go watch it. Right, that's me for now. Bye.